Okay, so you might as well record. One of the things that Dicken is talking about is the true self. And could you elaborate a little bit different? What's the difference between the true self and, let's say, our ego self?
Well, let me start with how we're born, because that's a good way of beginning to have an understanding of true self. Like, I love watching my grandkids because when they're first born, and when any of us are first born, let's broaden the scope here. When any of us are first born, it's what I would call the preconceptual stage. We haven't developed ideas about self or people or life, or we're just experiencing life directly. In other words, our awareness is fresh, innocent, and wide open. We live with a natural curiosity about everything. We're not yet, we don't yet have, we haven't yet developed a conceptual framework or a conceptual mind. Right? We're free of concept. We're free of the limitation of concepts that says, I shouldn't be this way, I shouldn't feel this way, there's something wrong with me, what do I am this kind of a person, I should. You're free of judgmental thinking. You're just being. You come into the world a human being, and we start off as beings who have a human body that allows us to experience our beingness. And then gradually we develop our conceptual mind, and more we start having thoughts and ideas and experiences, and it's a very important stage of development. Right? Very important to develop the ability to have ideas and concepts is very helpful. To develop our intellect is to develop this beautiful computer that we're given that we can utilize for the rest of our lives, to analyze, to process information, to store information. But it's just a tool. As Sid would remind us over and over again, it's a tool that we either use wisely or unwisely. And I see this as very, very innocent. As we get older, we start more and more identifying, I am what I think and I am what I feel. So if you have a thought that creates a feeling of tension, pretty soon you start saying, I don't like this, I could feel better, I'll feel better in the future. So now all of a sudden we're in time, we're waiting for a better future, we're looking for a better future, we're looking for something that will help us feel better. It's all very innocent. And then more and more we say, well, I am unhappy, rather than I'm just being, and unhappiness is a thought that comes and goes, or a feeling that comes and goes. So we start to identify with content as self, and that's suffering. That's suffering. And in those moments, when we fall out of our conceptual mind, and it happens to everybody I know, when we fall out of our conceptual mind, for a minute, we're free of the limitation of anything we're thinking. We're just being. And being is vast and infinite. Some people say that's the spiritual dimension of our being. It's formless. It's wide open. It's pure energy. It's not even wall-to-wall energy, because there are no walls to energy. There are no boundaries. It's infinite. Sometimes Sid would say, step back into infinity. I had no idea what he meant for a long time, because I was trying to figure it out. I was trying to think about what that meant, rather than, as Sid would say, you have to, if you want to discover the truth of who you are, if you want to discover your true self, you have to be able to go beyond all concepts. All concepts, all ideas. So we say, don't listen to the words, don't listen to my words. Just relax that whole project of trying to figure stuff out and think about it, because no one can analyze their way to truth. right? And then you have a moment where you just disengage from your intellect and you fall into the now. And you touch that space and it's wide open. It's just being. You've come home. And as Sid promised over and over again, but I had to find out for myself if it was true. If you can go one little step beyond your precious thought system, you'll touch a space that just feels relaxed and open and all-inclusive, and it will always, it must create something beautiful in your experience. Your feeling starts to open up rather than close, and that feels good. It's a nice feeling. And in that openness, in that wide openness, you are living in fresh thinking. So you get new thoughts and new ideas. You become more responsive, more creative, more motivated, more inspired, more uplifted, more understanding. Without effort, freely given to us as a gift. And more we begin to remember our true self as just this vast, ordinary, natural beingness that everything comes and goes in. That everything comes and goes in. Everything. All of our thoughts, all of our feelings, all of our perceptions come and go. Who we are is not what comes and goes. Who we are is the space in which all of that is coming and going. To experience that sets you free. To experience that is the cure for addiction. I'm convinced. I've seen it. I've seen it in myself. I've seen it in other people. It's the cure. The experience of our being, where suddenly we know we're free of the influence of all of the thoughts of judgments that we thought were true, all of the thoughts of identity, who we thought we were, who we think we are, all of that is made up. Those are just ideas that come and go. It's not our true self.
That's just beautiful, Dickon. I enjoy the way that you talk about this, because it just comes from such a simple, pure place. Everybody is muted. Really just keep down a background noise. If you have a question or comment for Dickon, please feel free to unmute yourself or click on the raise hand feature in the participants tab. Remember, this is more of a discussion. Dickon's done lots of these where he just talks and talks and talks. I'm sure he'd like to have more of a discussion too.
I love discussion, and less do I get on and talk and talk and talk. If possible, I love the interaction or the discussion. I mean, I'm just planting some seeds and reminding people of what I think is true about all of us, and so I'd love to hear from people.
I have a question.
Yeah, good.
Joel. A while back, I heard you talk on a webinar about the idea that in order for somebody to fall asleep at night, they have to, even for a second, they have to fall out of their conceptual mind. Now, I don't know if I got to hear the end of that webinar, but the implication I drew from that was that itself is proof that, if we're explaining this to somebody new, that there's nothing from the past creating your experience, that you have to reboot all your thoughts when you come back from sleep in order to have all those feelings again. First of all, is that correct? And also, can you say a little more about that?
Yeah, it's a metaphor. It's been around for centuries, that falling is a metaphor, because it feels like, when you know how it feels to feel uptight. Yes, your shoulders come up, you're tight, you can feel tension in your head, you're uptight, you're caught up in the apparent identity and reality of what you're thinking and feeling that's uptight. And then there's times when we metaphorically fall under or before that thinking. We fall away from that thinking. Like when you fall asleep, you don't try to do anything with your thinking, you just fall away from it. Right? Falling is one of the oldest metaphors to use to point people toward the experience of moving toward truth. Is to the ego, it feels like you're falling away from something. So they talk about falling in love. Right? Falling in love, and they use a metaphor where you fall out of your head into your heart. Why do they say you fall into your heart? Because as we fall away from the thoughts that create our suffering and upset and make us feel lousy, as we fall away from any of that thinking, as we fall away from our attachment even to positive thinking, you start to feel better. Your feeling starts to open up and you feel more spacious. Right? So you fall into a spacious sense of being. So it's just a metaphor. It's a metaphor, Joel, and it's been around forever. And it's helpful for us to realize that we already know what it is to fall out of our intellects, because we do it every night or you wouldn't go to sleep. And it's not a technique. Falling asleep is not a technique. If you try to make falling asleep a technique, it becomes a struggle. It becomes an effort. But when we actually fall, we're just shifting, disengaging from our intellect. So we have free will. Any one of us can, at any moment, can use their free will to disengage from personal thought. Fall into the openness that we are. Open is another metaphor for our true self. Openness is another metaphor for true self. So you can fall open, falling open, being open-minded, being open-hearted. Being open-minded means you fall away from concepts. Being open-hearted means you fall away from attachment to who you are as a feeling. Right? If you fall away from all thoughts and feelings, there's another just feeling of being that's a beautiful feeling, but it's not a particular feeling. So Sid says if you fall out of your conceptual mind, there's a beautiful feeling, but there's no word in the English language for that feeling. Because in order to label it, you'd have to go back into your conceptual mind and say, well, it's love, it's peace, it's joy, it's contentment. And I spent a lot of my life trying to figure out what the feeling was. And now I'm just satisfied is that there's a feeling that I can never explain or describe, but it's beautiful and it's ordinary. And when I fall out of my personal mind, it's always there because whatever I'm feeling starts to open up. So if I'm angry, the labels and thoughts and judgments about anger fall away as I fall away from my thinking. And then anger is a beautiful feeling when it's just opening and has no judgment and label to it. So it's an unconditional love that embraces all feelings. All feelings. It's not like I'm anxious now and then later on I can feel loving. It's I fall out of my conceptual mind and anxiety is love. There's nowhere to go. Well, it's just something that's tickling me to no end to find out that there really is an unconditional love that embraces every experience you're having. So it's not like there's experience and then there's love at the other end of the spectrum. There's a love that's a way of talking about our universal nature, the feeling of being. The feeling of being as you are in this moment, just as you are. Nowhere to go, nothing to improve, nothing to fix. Just fall open to our true nature in this moment.
And we're not sick or diseased.
I love.
I've
what-
never, I don't know. I've never seen a person that I think is mentally ill. I see people who are misidentified or misunderstanding, but I had that same misunderstanding. So either I say nobody is sick, or I say we're all sick all the time and we don't know it. And in those moments when we realize that all of a sudden that's just an idea that has no substance or truth to it. And don't get me wrong, I'm not naive. I can suffer, and I know other people can suffer, and we can get caught back up with and identified with any thought or feeling, and we'll start suffering. We stop living and experience the openness that we are. You watch, anybody who's suffering is focusing on something and thinking about it. When people fall wide open, they're not focused on anything, they're focused on the whole. And when we're focused on the whole, there is no suffering. Which is why we keep trying to point people back toward the principles, because that's just another way of saying the whole. The whole of life.
That's right.
Universal mind, universal consciousness, universal thought, divine mind, divine consciousness, divine thought, the whole field of energy that takes form, dances in form. It's the same energy dancing. Is that helpful, Joel? Is that helpful? I hope that gets to your question.
Well, that was such a rich presentation in a way I'd never heard things before, which was great. My question was something a little bit different, but I don't want to belabor the point here. I got so much out of that.
Okay. I answered the question you didn't ask, and the answer to the question you didn't ask is satisfying too. Maybe we should go with that.
That was a full meal, and I'll save the other question for another time. Or if there's time at the end and nobody has other questions, that'll be fine.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, speaking of questions, we have Chris Noonan with his hand up. Go ahead, Chris, you're unmuted.
Thank you. Hello, Dickon, you beautiful man.
Hi, Chris, you beautiful man. Good to see you. Wow.
I was just, when you were talking, it just came to me that in a way, the addiction for me has always been trying to understand what's going on.
Mm.
So if I was feeling bad, I would try to understand, why am I feeling bad?
Yeah.
And my thinking would start kind of finding stuff that could be the reason why. And the more I do that, the more, going down the hole, because I can't find the solution. And it's like having a puzzle, and there's a bit missing, and you want to fill this, it just keeps on. And so for me, that would be kind of a metaphor for addiction and how it works for me. Maybe other people have this too. And the point where I feel better is actually sometimes, just being so overwhelmed with all this thinking that I can't fit the pieces together. And I can't think, and then I feel better. because I've kind of lost the battle, so to speak. And what you're pointing to is a much easier way, isn't it?
Well, I don't know if it's easier. I like what you're saying, Chris, about trying to understand is such an effortful stance. And here we are, if we're not feeling good right away, if we think there's something wrong with that feeling,
yeah,
we're going to look for a solution to it. So we've not only we've created a problem that didn't really exist, right? Like, this is why I love newborn consciousness. I watch my grandson have all kinds of feelings, and he doesn't think any of them are wrong or bad, and he's not trying to fix any of them. Right? So the fact that you now can have feeling, and rather than trying to understand the feeling intellectually, you stand under the feeling, and then you start to feel better. I mean, that is truth, that the instant we fall out of our personal thinking, no matter who we are or where we are or what we're experiencing, we start to feel better. The feeling goes, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's the total opposite of, I studied psychology.
Yeah.
And it was kind of that was very important. I have papers showing that I'm very good at analyzing and finding a reason. And what we were told at that time was that when we find the reason, then we can let go.
Yes.
But it's not right. It's actually not the truth. Letting go is much more simple. You don't have to understand. And as a child's mind, yeah, it's beautiful. So I'm working. No, I'm not working on it. Sorry, God, you know what I mean.
Yeah. I'm working on not working. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I like the story of back in Robin Hood days in England. There was a guy walking through Sherwood Forest, and he had a big bag of money on his side. And all of a sudden, some robber shoots him in the back with an arrow, and he falls to the ground. And the robber runs over and grabs the bag of money, pulls it off, and runs away. And this poor guy is laying there in the forest with this arrow in his back, and he's in a lot of pain. And finally, another traveler comes along and sees him, and he runs over and he says, "Here, let me help you. I'll take the arrow out." And the guy says, "Don't touch that arrow until I find out who shot the arrow and why they shot it." And for me, that was therapy. I'd come in and I'd say, "I'm suffering. Oh my God, I got to figure this out." And we'd spend hours and hours and hours figuring that out rather than just letting go and the arrow would just disappear,
Love you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. All right, next up we have Jackie. Okay, Jackie, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi, Dicken.
Oh, hi, Jackie. Good to see you.
Oh, good to see you. There's something I've been a little leery of getting too much into because it's like it's a good thing and I'm afraid I'm going to wreck it. Because usually when I think about unrecognized thought, it's about negative things. But apparently I'm having some really positive unrecognized thought, and I'm wondering about that whole area and about control, because I just had a bad year. I got very caught up in my misery about things and disappointment, and started eating and didn't stop for about 35 pounds, because food is my thing. I don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's some other things that look better that I wish they were my bad habits, but it's food. It's always been food. And then after a bunch of false stops, I knew I needed rest, and I had a 4-day weekend and I rested, and I just stopped. It a switch flipped. Like, I don't care about anything. I don't care about my health. I just want more donut holes. And then it switched off.
Yeah.
Why would I go eat donut holes? I want to feel better. That makes no sense. And what has really astonished me, given what my thinking ordinarily is about myself, I have not been angry at myself. I've done some damage aesthetically and possibly in my health. I don't know. But I just feel very tender towards myself, like, oh, poor baby. That was my only escape, or so I believed. And some other things are, and I'm just behaving like a healthier person would behave without effort. And there's room to do better, but I'm not worried about it. And I'm starting to see some other things about photography and business and stuff. And I don't know why. I don't know
Yeah.
why. There was no, I'm used to insights with a brass band marching alongside. And there was no moment. There was no, and I thought, well, is it everything I've been studying and it finally landed, or what? Or does it even have anything to do with anything? And I am leery of analyzing or thinking about it because it's just going nicely. But I'm not accustomed to being kind to myself. I don't know where the hell that came from, you know? And I wonder, I don't understand. I know usually it's like I don't understand the terrible things, but I'm used to, I don't understand the good stuff. I don't know what's happening.
Well, I liked how you talked about it, Jackie, that you said that at a certain point, all you could think about is donut holes.
Yes.
And then something shifted,
Yeah.
right? Something shifted in you. And when something shifted, a lot of the thinking that had been so important to you wasn't so important. So your desires and thoughts of desire, I desire this, I need this, I want this, I have to have it to feel better. Those thoughts fell away, right? The desire to go after donut holes fell away, which is just thinking, right? That's just an expression of being caught up in and identified with the content of life again, rather than the experience of wide openness and wholeness, right? So then at a certain point, people, and it can happen out of understanding or it can happen spontaneously, people fall beyond the influence of their personal thinking and personal mind. And they remember their true nature. They experience this wide openness, this vastness. And all we need to do is touch that space of wide openness. And things shift. That's what I would call a shift in a level of consciousness. It has nothing to do with the intellect. So the intellect can't understand a shift in consciousness.
Oh.
The intellect won't be able to understand how one way of experiencing the world suddenly disappears and a completely different way of experiencing the world shows up. And when you shift to a higher level of understanding or consciousness, it's always characterized by more innocence, more wisdom, and more kindness. It's the nature of it. When we fall beyond the conceptual mind, it wakes up our wisdom. It wakes up the fresh newness of life, so that we're experiencing life fresh. We're not experiencing it through the personal self anymore. And always there's greater knowing.
Mm-hmm.
Greater knowing. There's more wisdom coming through, if you will. And so with greater knowing, you move toward well-being. So you're kinder to yourself, you're more compassionate toward others, you feel more at ease. Right? That's a shift in consciousness, Jackie. A shift in consciousness is just a moment of remembrance of our true nature, which is whole, rather than separate and part. And then you go beyond, I like what else you said too, is that it's freedom from positive thinking, because then you go beyond positive concepts too. You know, the Tibetan Buddhists say being attached to negative concepts is true are like chains that bind you. And being attached to positive concepts you think are true are like golden chains. So Sid says you have to go beyond all concepts. He doesn't say you have to go beyond negative concepts. You have to go beyond all concepts into the now, which is any moment of awareness, free of the limitations of our personal mind, free of the limitations of our personal thinking. And when we touch that space, it awakens our heart and we become more loving, more compassionate, more understanding.
And I actually had a pretty interesting experience with this myself recently, Jackie. Back in November, I had a pretty big insight about food and what I'm putting into my body. And I just instantly, without effort, changed everything I was eating. It was kind of strange. I started making smoothies and I don't know, things changed. I lost 57 pounds. And probably it was about a month and a half ago or so, I just started eating junk food again. No reason, nothing to it. But there was a difference between this time eating junk food and in the past eating junk food, whereas this time I knew it was temporary. And I didn't beat myself up over it, even though I gained 14 pounds back. I knew that it was temporary. And this past week or so, it just dropped away again. Then I'm back to eating healthy and I'm back to losing weight. And I just joined a gym and it's the ebb and flow of things. You know, I had that habit for so many years of reaching out for junk food if I felt a little bit of stress, and I kind of lost sight of you know, the nature of thought and fell into it again.
Yeah.
And then it dropped away this past week. That's it. It left. And it might come back.
Yeah, I'm seeing it's not it's not the shift in consciousness it's like a contextual thing. It's showing up in an obvious area for me with food, but it's showing up elsewhere too. And this sense of, I guess it's well-being. It's like, oh, good. Why wouldn't good things happen?
That's the key there. That's the key, Jackie. You want to have a good time.
Yeah.
For the truth is, I can't figure anything out. But if I have a good time, everything makes sense to me, and then I've regained my spirit, and the clarity is there. But when I don't have a good time, it seems like I'm spending a lot of time thinking. And that's about all I understand, to be honest. I'd like to have a good time.
Excuse me. So it's, and now it's sort of the intellect's job to start going all Sherlock Holmes about stuff, because that's what it does, but it's not, I don't, excuse me. That's just its thing. I don't need I don't need to intellectually understand what has happened. I can just be grateful, and because it's not like a place you get to anyway, and then you stay there. Things just keep, you know, who knows what will be next, but it's bigger than how I'm thinking about myself or how I'm behaving. It's something bigger than that about life.
You know, I think one of the greatest things that any of us can do is to learn to be gentle with ourselves. No matter what's going on, no matter how badly we seem to be screwing up, it's all temporary. Everything will pass if we let it. It's when we get into our intellect and we start being hard on ourselves that we really create more issues and cause these things to hang around longer.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that we can learn it. I know for me, I think it's a gift. I just think it's a gift.
That's something I learned. I had to learn it. I was so hard on myself for so many years. And I had to learn to be gentle with myself. And that really made a tremendous difference in my life.
Mhm.
Thank you so much, Jackie. We have Trevor has his hand up. Okay, Trevor, go ahead. You're unmuted.
Hey, Dickie. Hi.
Hi, Trevor.
Oh, man, what a day. I've been crying all day. Mostly in the last 20 minutes with laughter, I've got to say, which is good. I just, wow, last 3 days, I've been made redundant, and I've been served notice on my flat at the same time. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. I just need to fall back into peace and, just like settle into this. But my question is, as an aside as well, I haven't had a drink, I haven't overeaten, I haven't done anything. Like, I haven't medicated, which I'm pretty proud of. I'm sort of dealing with it. So my question was, how do you fall out of your thinking when a big life event rocks your world? Because it seems like I can fall into a bit of space, like a bit of peace, but then it just starts churning again, and my intellect comes in and goes, "Oh man, you need to sort this out. This is serious." And it's like flip flop. I'm finding myself in the last couple of days flip flopping from one to the other. Did I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. Good. That was the idea. Cool. All right. Let's go. What do you got?
Fall open, we've been using that as a metaphor, but it's just a metaphor. Right? If I start thinking about falling or thinking about being open, it's no longer a metaphor.
Oh, God.
Because openness, just being ourselves as we are, is our most natural state. It's not something we can do. It's something that's always there, even when we're caught up.
When big stuff hits, though, like, psychologically, there's an emotional series of phases that you go through, isn't it? It's sort of like denial. I don't know, psychologists, you probably know better than me, but it's sort of diagnosed that human beings react in a certain way.
Well, everybody has their own thought reactions in response to anything. So it can be different. It can be different, Trevor. There's no stages that you go through. People make up stages. They're ideas. Right? It's easier. It's easier. It's easier than that. There have been hints left by the wise for centuries, and the two biggest hints that I learned from Sid Banks. The first one is the one Harry is talking about. Sid would so often say, "Listen for a feeling." Now, this is how I understand that now. Listen is another metaphor for wide open. Listen is another metaphor for being. If I'm really listening, I can't think and listen at the same time. So if I let go of my thinking and just listen, I'm just standing wide open and receptive at that moment. I'm back. That's my newborn consciousness. That's my natural state of mind. That's my default setting. That's the truth of life. There is nothing wider. That's it. Right? Listen. And then if you're just resting in that place of listening, as opposed to thinking about things and thinking about your life, thoughts can come and go freely then. It doesn't matter if you have one thought or 1,000 thoughts or no thoughts. It doesn't matter, because you're just like wide open. It's Thoughts are free to come and go. You're not focusing on anything. You're focusing on the whole. You're wide open. Listen, listen. And then you're feeling always, in my experience, I had to find this out. Is this true? If I'm wide open, does my feeling contract or does it open?
Yeah.
And my experience is when I'm wide open, whatever I'm feeling starts to expand. And any feeling that I'm feeling that's expanding is pleasurable. So listen for a feeling. It's a nice feeling. No words for it. No words for it. It's just opening as opposed to closing.
You were saying earlier about how anxiety is on the same spectrum as love. Could you say a bit more about that?
Love is not on the spectrum. Love contains, the way I'm talking about love is the feeling of being that contains any experience, any thought, any feeling is free to come and go in the context of that. When I'm wide open, I can feel happy, sad, joy, but I'm not labeling any of it. It really is like being a newborn again. Newborns don't go, oh, I'm feeling sad. What does this mean? Why am I feeling sad? There's no conceptualization about it. It's what spiritual teachers call non-dual consciousness. There is no duality.
I was so surprised when you said that. Like my eyes just popped out of my head when you said that children don't care about their feelings. I was like, what? Because I was one, but I forgot. You know, I'm trying to remember. Did I? No, I guess I didn't really. Oh man.
What?
Yeah. Oh.
I like the emoji with that sort of surprise, because that's when it's all coming fresh and innocence, there's no label on it. There's no judgment about it. And surprise is a characteristic of our natural state, or of surprise, openness, curiosity, allowing, freshness.
Yeah. Oh, I could do with some of that.
Yeah.
Rachel had a question. She raised her hand. So,
well, Scott had his hand up first. I wanted to check with him to see if he still had a question.
Thanks, Diggy.
Did you still have something, Scott? You're unmuted. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I guess what I wanted to talk about was the mind-body connection a little bit, I guess. Some of it kind of got answered for me, but that connection and using the mind as healing. Dickens, you look great. I mean, I can tell something's going on, physically with you in my perception. So I guess I've always been interested in that, coming from the medicine background and whatnot. So, if you have any feelings on that.
Well, it's very interesting. I'm going through all kinds of physical stuff, Scott, and I'm due for an operation soon. But I'm finding out that my well-being has nothing to do with my physical circumstance. In other words, this natural stance of pure thought, pure consciousness, pure mind, wide open presence is our nature at all times, no matter what our physical body is doing or not doing. It's our nature. And when we lose sight of that, we start focusing on particular things and thinking about them. That's what the intellect, as Jackie was saying earlier, that's the job of the intellect. It'll focus on any object and start conceptualizing. When we're wide open, the intellect goes to sleep because we're not focusing on a particular object to think about. Right? So rather than thinking about the mind-body connection, they're already completely connected. It's my experience that it seems like I'm separate and disconnected when I get into ideas. That's when I suffer.
Yeah.
When I'm wide open, I have all kinds of experiences. My body does whatever it does. But I have more savvy on how to deal with whatever my body throws my way, if you will. So I eat a certain way and I do certain things and I exercise and I go to doctors. And one time somebody came up to Sid and said, Sid, you know, I have this particular ailment and I know it's just all mind and body but I don't know what to do. And what would you do, Sid? And he goes, and she was expecting some kind of great spiritual answer. And he says, I'd go to the doctor.
Yeah. That's
Just common sense, you know. It's like, what do you mean? It's like, if I have something that's really ailing me, I'd go to the doctor. On a physical level, I'd go to the doctor and get some information, and then I'd sit with it and see what makes sense, and then see what to do.
Yeah, I guess I've seen a couple spontaneous recoveries, and it always sort of interests me.
Yeah, well, that is, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. Yeah, we sure don't even have a clue about what ultimately is possible. But I feel like when I'm wide open, I'm not caught up in thoughts of limitation. So I'm open to possibility. And then whatever happens is a miracle, though. When I'm in my ego, I'm waiting for a certain thing to happen and I'm dissatisfied until it shows up. And I think I already know what it should be. When I fall wide open, I'm free.
That's good. I think I've been caught up in that type of thing. Yeah.
Easy for any of us.
The expectation, you know.
Easy, yeah. Well, Rachel has been patient here. Let's check in with Rachel.
Yeah, Richard, you're unmuted now.
Okay, hi everyone. It's fascinating. Going back to what Joel brought up, what came to me is this, you know, the notion that we all have is when we work really hard or we get tired, we know we are going to get a very good night of sleep. And you know, it's like we are so tired that the brain is just like, you know, there's no resistance and it's easy. The same goes, you know, what comes to me is, you know, they have to go rock bottom. You know, they got to the point where it is like, you know, giving up, no more fighting. And that's where the spirit comes in. Just thought.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting that you're right? We all love a good night's sleep. When we touch that space where we're free, it's deep sleep is before dreaming sleep or beyond dreaming sleep. And that's where it's most restful. So you can say that happiness is the complete absence of concept. True happiness. It's not even living in a positive concept. It's beyond that. And the good news is that that's our natural state and available to us in every moment because it's the core and essence of every moment. Yeah.
Also, when you were saying about listening to the feeling, that's when we don't identify with the feeling. There is a distance from the feeling. Because as long as I identify with the feeling, I'm in the feeling. And that's all experience. But once I listen to it, I'm no longer feeling. I'm away from the feeling. And so there's room for the feeling to be and for me to be.
Yeah, getting caught up in and attached to any thought or feeling immediately creates suffering. Wide openness allows thought and feelings to come and go freely. Any thought and feeling is free to come and go. In wide openness, there's less and less thinking about our experience, and we're just experiencing it directly.
Yeah.
I love the phrase, when we fall wide open, we come to our senses. So we're in our senses rather than in our intellect and inner in our concepts, and we actually experience life more directly.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Rachel.
Talopa talked about that many years ago. I can't remember when he lived, but he said, have a mind that is open to everything and attached to nothing.
Yeah. That's true.
Sabia has her hand up. So you are unmuted now, Sabia. Go ahead.
Thank you, Greg. Dickie, I've got two questions. Initially, it was just one. The first one was, you says children don't care about their feelings.
Say that again. Is it?
You said something like children don't care about their feelings. Can you hear that?
It's the sound is not real clear. So
She's asking about earlier when you said that children don't care about their feelings. She'd like you to elaborate on that.
Oh. Well, they don't. Yes, is that right, Sabia?
My 2-year-old, I see her playing out tantrums because of a feeling, which I think, like say she wants something and she doesn't get what she wants, she will have a tantrum. So to me, that's a feeling that she's reacting to.
Yes. Yeah, it doesn't take long for us to begin to get caught up in our thinking and feeling and not realizing the nature of it. When I'm talking about infants, I'm talking about when we're first born and first having experiences, we don't have desires and thoughts and judgments. You're talking about an older child that now has desires, thoughts, and judgments and is getting caught up in her desires and needs.
But even with a 2-year-old, they don't hold on to those. They let it go. They throw a temper tantrum and then they go to play again. Whereas as adults, we get to that point, we throw that temper tantrum and then we decide we're going to be angry at that person for the next 30 years. So you can see the progression of getting caught up in this as we go through life. And I love watching children because they're that nice in between. It's a reminder of where we came from. They fall and skin their knee and they go, they cry and they go, ow, but then they get up and they go back to playing. Whereas a lot of adults fall and skin their knee and it's, oh no, I need to go to the doctor. I might need to get stitches. I need to get a bandage, and all that stuff. And we make a big story out of it. It just progresses as we go through life. So I think that's more of what Dickon was pointing at, is the younger we are, the less likely we are to hold on to the things. We just let go easier. We don't get caught up in it as long.
And it's much easier to step into the positive spiritual feelings of life. The truth of what Dickon is pointing us towards, they step into that naturally. And carry Dickon and myself into it. So they're already there, and then they guide us in a way, because we love them, right into that feeling. So it's not only that they cope better or understand better, they just intuitively are heading towards the truth that they're living in. One time I put a chime, I was holding my little grandson, who was very, very young, and I saw myself, oh, I like this sound. Oh, this is good. And then I enjoyed it. I saw my grandson, he just stepped into the sound and became the sound. That was not the way that was a great teaching for me.
Yes. Well, thank you for clarifying that to all three of you. Greg, can I just pose another question?
Yeah, absolutely.
I say I want to be healthy and I want to lose weight. And those are things I really want for myself, so that I can feel that's the thing, I've made it dependable. Even as I'm asking the question, I've made it like, if this and this happens, I'll be happy. Even though that's the intellect. And I know that even if everything falls into place, it cannot make me happy. So willpower, I'm not even sure how to ask the, exactly what I'm asking for. Where does willpower, say for instance, eating healthy is good for you. But you have to have strong willpower. I don't know what I'm asking.
I see it as willpower is a creation of the intellect. It can be useful, but it's not the ultimate answer. And insight is the ultimate answer. To me, that would be my take on that.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I like that, Craig.
Yeah, me too.
So whilst you find yourself not having had that insight, and you I guess what I'm saying, in the interim period of when I see the insight, in between, do I just use willpower?
Yeah, one of the things I've noticed is that everywhere I go, people are sitting around waiting for insights, or thinking that an insight is going to be a set of words that will occur to you at a certain point in the future that will set you free. And an insight, the way I look at it, is anytime we fall out of our thinking, we step within and we see life from within. That's an insight. We're seeing from our heart. We're seeing from the wisdom heart. We're not in our intellect now waiting. The intellect waits. The intellect creates time. The intellect creates problems. I fall out of my thinking. I'm not waiting for anything. I'm just fully present to life as it is. And what I'm discovering is that when I'm fully present to life, I don't have to know at all from my intellect how to deal with anything or do anything. Wisdom takes care of it. Wisdom manages my life perfectly. It's this deeper intelligence. Is if I'm waiting around for insights and thinking about my life, the intellect can't manage life. It doesn't. So sometimes I say when I fall out of my thinking, I'm letting wisdom have her way with me. And that's a beautiful experience. Beautiful experience. I just go about, if my wisdom takes me to the refrigerator, that's the answer. If it takes me to the couch, it's the answer. If it takes me to the phone, it's the answer. It's like, if I follow wisdom or allow wisdom to live me, it always keeps moving me in a direction that's healthy and that works out. And maybe then new thinking might come that's helpful. But I'm not sitting around waiting for new thinking. Insight is seeing life from within. It's standing within. It's falling out of your head into your heart, and your heart includes the intellect. Then it's not away from it, and it keeps moving you through life gracefully.
That's a great point, Dick, and because I think there's a lot of people in the three principles that think that insights only come when you're quiet and sitting down and maybe meditating, or not necessarily meditating, but when you're quiet. But a lot of mine have come when I was taking action. And sometimes that insight was telling me that the action I was taking wasn't in the right direction. But
let me put it this way. I think about 9/10 of my insights don't have any words at all. It's just a knowing. I just know what to do, what to say, and I don't even have to think about it. It doesn't go through my intellect. Like I used to play sports, and when I was playing sports, I didn't have to process anything in my intellect to know what to do. And if I went into my thinking, I would lose my sports knowing. And I'd have to get my head back into the game, which actually means to get out of my head so that I can be back in the game. right? It's called being in the zone. Right? It's where you learn to not rely on your intellect to give you all the answers.
Thank you, Dicky. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, Sylvia. Hey, can we come back to Joel's unasked question?
Sure. Go ahead, Joel.
I'm so curious, Joel. You left it out there as a teaser.
Oh my God.
That's too funny. Yeah.
I feel like when I nail it, it's gonna pale in comparison to what I got earlier. Okay. So I was yesterday. I was talking to a group of teachers, and I was explaining to them how, about the inside-out nature of life, and to the degree that I even understand it, I was talking about how our biology even agrees with the concept of everything right on the inside, because we even the stuff we hear, the sound we hear, we recreate that inside of us because of the machinery, how things work, and then slap our meaning on what we've heard at the speed of light, or the way our eyes actually work. We're not seeing directly what's out there, we're recreating inside of our heads. But I was also trying to recall that thing that I heard you say about, you said to even fall asleep for a second, we have to sever the link of our conceptual, we do fall out of our conceptual minds. So then when we wake up again, we're rebooting all of the thoughts and having all those feelings and making the mistake of thinking that those feelings are coming from the past continuously. And I just wanted to make sure that that if I talk to the teachers again, that I'm not saying something that's scientifically not accurate. Is that what you were saying, that in order to fall asleep, even for a second, you have to fall out of your conceptual mind?
Well, Joe, I'm less interested in how to say it and more interested in if it's helpful to somebody.
Yeah.
So was it helpful to teachers? And one of the ways I judge that is when I talk to people, do they get in their heads more in response to what I say, or do they fall out of their head and begin to experience the space where they find their own wisdom, their own deeper feeling? So what was it helpful, Joel, to your teachers?
Well, what you said right now is helpful in having me do that. Yeah, that was really helpful when you said. Yeah, I recognize now if I read you over the course of the day, many things were wonderful, and people even remarked about the nice feeling in the room.
Yeah.
But I do notice now that there were times when, oh yeah, I was trying to explain things and we were all just talking from
yes
head, and I wasn't cognizant of the fact that each element of the facilitation can be guided by, do people fall out of
yes
their heads?
Yeah, it can be a very helpful indicator when you're talking to a group of people. I'm very particular when I'm in front of the room, if what I'm saying is helping people to fall open and experience something deeper from within, or whether it's just I'm getting too much into my own ideas and it's getting people into their heads too much. Right? That's a good indicator. It can be very helpful with your sharing and with your teaching. It's helped me realize how much of my teaching was spent trying to explain rather than just point. I'm pointing towards something that can't be explained.
Yeah, I see that, and also recognizing that when we're in the feeling,
yeah,
you don't have to worry about further explanations.
Exactly. It's like One of my favorite stories of Sid Banks was you said, if you're listening to one of my talks on a tape in your car, back when we had tapes, he said, if you were listening to one of my talks and you fall open and have a nice feeling, right then, take the tape out. Open your window and throw it out the window. Because you've gotten the point. You've stood under your intellect and experienced truth, experienced your well-being. And when we experience our well-being like that, it always guides us through life beautifully. So it's a good lesson for any of us to, if you fall into that space, Joel, and into that feeling, it really helps invite other people to look in that direction. If you're trying too hard to explain something, you're back in your head, and it'll bring people right into their heads, and it won't be particularly helpful to them.
Wow. Yeah, we'd spend most of the day in that nice feeling, and then toward the end, trying to explain it further. It got
Yes.
back into head.
Yeah. Yeah.
People think that is it's nice. We could end early today. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Help people recognize when they fall into that space that is what they're looking for. You know, it's just this. That's again, we're back to the metaphor of listen for a feeling. And wisdom is found in that feeling, and it'll bring you all the answers you need when you're in that space. And it's available to us in every moment. We're a thought away from being open to the openness that we truly are, because it's our nature.
Yes.
Good. Glad we came back, Joel. Thanks. You teaser, you.
That's great. Did you have time for one more question, Dickon?
Yeah, sure.
Chris has his hand back up. You're unmuted, Chris. Go ahead.
Oh, good.
When you were saying that about the listening to the feeling, or years back, I had this hospital incident. I was very sick, and I had this experience of love. But I remember in the days after, I had this opening of my heart. That I had this voice inside of me saying, "Drink green tea," and I don't like green tea.
Mm.
So it was very interesting because I started drinking green tea, and I still have no idea why I would, but obviously this was a very helpful, it was something that was very helpful that was going on. So I knew that I had this, this is right. So for me, that was such a beautiful experience. And what you're saying is that we can have it anytime.
Yes, that's true. Because we are that at all times.
Yeah.
It is, again, it's surprising what comes up. And like I've discovered over and over again, because I didn't want to take anybody's word for this, but I discovered that when I really was not, when I was wide open and not holding any concept in mind or any thought or belief in mind, my feeling would open, which was just a nice feeling. No matter what I was feeling, it would open. So I didn't have to wait for a different feeling. That feeling would open. Whatever I'm feeling in the moment would open. And thinking that would occur to me would be more helpful. But one time Sid saw how we would grab onto a helpful thought and identify with it and try and hold on to it, thinking we had the insight in our hand. And he could see. So he said to us one time, what I've learned is that the quickest way to kill an insight is to grab onto the word. If you have an insight, stay with the feeling And the insight will keep unfolding because it's a knowing that transcends, includes, but transcends the intellect. So it's more than anything you can explain to yourself or more than any particular thought or idea. And so pretty soon then you're more interested in staying in the openness where everything is free to flow and move and where there's a deeper knowing and a deeper feeling of you love everything that shows up. So.
And what's so beautiful, Dick, in what you're saying is we haven't mentioned the word addiction, but you've been talking about it nonstop from the beginning. I find that fascinating, the way that has gone on. It has been directly applicable to a practical result for what people have on their mind in this subject. And that's fantastic, the way you've done that.
Well, a number of other people helped with that and said that they become addicted to a certain trying to understand, or they become addicted to a certain way of thinking or a certain idea or a certain belief. And sometimes people say long become we before people become addicted to substances, they become addicted to or caught up in or identified with their own personal thinking. It becomes personal. It becomes egocentric. It becomes about me. When we fall wide open, the personal mind goes to sleep. That's how Sid defined meditation. Our natural state is meditative. When our personal mind goes to sleep, in other words, when we're not giving it attention and thinking about things, we're just open to everything. Our focus is wide open. When my focus is wide open, it's like I'm totally in my senses. It's like I see the tree, I hear, I feel my hands. I can recognize thoughts coming up, feelings coming up, and it's all just part of this openness. So the openness embraces all of it. It's all one. It's all part of the same energy dancing around.
Mm.
And that's the cure for addiction.
It is.
Experiencing the feeling of being at one with life is the cure for all that ails us.
Letting go of the story of me.
Yeah.
I'm not a noun, I'm a verb.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Dickon, for coming on today. This was awesome. It was such a
No, you're
beautiful
welcome.
feeling here.
It's been fun.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
I'd
it's
like to
been
thank
fun.
Chris, Joel, Jackie, Trevor, Scott, Rachel, Sabi, everybody for participating and making this a great conversation. This is beautiful. So remember, this is the month that we're starting first and third Sundays so that Harry and I can have some time off to plan things. So we will not have a session next week, but we'll be back the week after that. And I did post a question in the Addiction, Alcoholism, and the Three Principles group on Facebook to find out what kind of topics you would like to have discussed. So please feel free to post on there and let us know, and we'll get those questions on. So thanks again, Dick, and love you. You're always such a great inspiration to me.
Well, Greg, I love what you and Harry are doing. I really do. And the spirit in which you're doing it in, and I love your way of creating dialogue as opposed to just lecture.
Thank you.
Yeah, way better. Thank you.
Way better.
Way better, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
It's a lot of fun, I got to say. So I'm going to mute everybody. So if you want to say goodbye or thanks or whatever.
Thank you, Dickon.
Thank you.
Hi, Marina.
Gracias, Dickon. I love you.
Good to see everybody.